What the heck is a bullet journal grid spacing sheet? This is a word that's thrown around a lot in the bujo community, but if you're new, you may not know what it is. I got a couple comments asking about it, so I thought I'd make a full video. So essentially, a bullet journal grid spacing cheat sheet is just a page at the beginning of the bullet journal that helps you measure how many spaces there are on one page in your bullet journal. By counting the dot grid and measuring out measurements like halves, thirds, and quarters, this spread makes it really simple for us to make other spreads later down the line in the journal. All we're going to need is 1, a bullet journal, 2, a pen. I'm using the Sakura Pigma Micron in size 01. I'm also going to be using a Tombow dual-tipped brush pen. This is the twin tone brush pen, so it has a black and gray calligraphy side, but this is completely optional. And lastly, I'm going to be using just a random ruler from Office Depot, but this one is actually also optional. All you really need is a journal and one thing to write with. So the first step, number 1, is to count how many spaces there are both horizontally and vertically on the page. I like to leave a little bit of gap in the top left corner while I do this just for aesthetic purposes. So I'm actually going to start like a couple rows in and start right here and just literally number all the spaces coming down. Now you may be asking yourself, what do you mean spaces? Well, most bullet journals have a dot grid on them, and so the spaces in between the dots is where I'm writing the numbers and what I'm counting. If you are bullet journaling in a different type of notebook, like a graph notebook, this could work too. If you're doing a lined notebook, you don't really have the spaces horizontally, even though you do have them vertically. So you can obviously measure this however you want, depending on what journal you have and whatever suits you best. But if you have a dot grid, this is just the normal routine and what a lot of people do, but again, it's not going to be perfect. It just depends on what journal you have. I'm currently using an A5 bullet journal, which is the only bullet journal I've used since the beginning of 2021, and they always have 38 spaces vertically. Now 38 spaces means that there is technically 39 rows of dots because you're just counting the spaces in between the dots. Now I'm going to do the same thing at the top, going across horizontally and counting the vertical spaces, and I did smear the pen right there, which is kind of unfortunate actually, but whatever. No matter how long I've bullet journaled for, I do quite often forget how many spaces there are, so it's really nice to just have this numbered so I can always come back and reference it. There are 26 spaces horizontally and 38 vertically. If you have an A5 journal, yours is probably just like mine, so you can literally copy my exact same measurements. So now that we know how many spaces there are across, the next thing to do is to measure out halves. Now there are 2 different ways to do this, and I will demonstrate both in this video. The 2 options are basically either without margins or including margins. So I'll do one on the left without margins, which is what I usually do in my own bullet journal, and then I'll do one right here with margins to kind of show you the differences. But on both sides, what we're going to be doing is dividing each page into halves, thirds, and quarters. Now you can do many other dimensions than this. These are just most of the dimensions that I usually use in my bullet journal, dividing a page into 2, 3, or 4 parts. Sometimes people like to do sevenths, for example, like if you're doing 7 days of the week on one page, you might want to give an example here, since that's a common measurement that you might use in a bullet journal when you're drawing calendars or things like that. You can also do groups of 5, 6, 8, you know, whatever kind of measurement you want, but I like to keep things simple. Just do halves, thirds, and quarters, and that's enough for me. So this is technically where the ruler can come in if you'd like help either measuring or keeping straight lines. For me, you can either count. So if there are 26 spaces, then the halfway point is going to be after the 13th space. So it's pretty easy to keep in my head. The other option is you can line up the ruler based on centimeters, because 1 centimeter is 2 spaces of the dot grid in a normal dot grid paper. Across all the dot grids, it is 13 centimeters, so the halfway point would be 6.5 centimeters, and that is exactly the same as after the 13 number on this line right here. So basically what I'm saying is I'm just going to draw a straight line coming down right in the middle to divide my page into half. There we go. And just to label it, I'm going to put a little half right there so I can remember what number this is. I'm going to do the same thing vertically. So it's 38 dots all the way down, which means halfway is right after 19. So I'm just going to do one line, cutting the page in half right here. And again, let me write a little half so we know what this measurement is. Very simple. There are 4 perfectly equal quadrants in this page. And it's good to come back and reference, because if I wanted to divide a page later on into quarters, I would know exactly how many dots to count horizontally and vertically to make these boxes. Now, obviously quarters are half of halves, okay? I am never trying to be a math teacher here, but I'm just trying to state the obvious. So what I could essentially do is just cut these quadrants into half to show you what the quarter measurements are. Now, it can be a little difficult because unfortunately these are odd numbers. So 13 can't be divided evenly into 2. So you have two options. Either you do a 6.5 line where you basically cut right here in the middle of the number 7 because that's after 6.5 spaces, or you can kind of take into consideration the fact that you didn't count the space between the edge of the paper and the first line of dots. So if you counted that, technically there would be 14 spaces here, if that makes sense. So the dot grid starts about 0.5 centimeter into the paper, which is why I just counted this section, but there is a little bit of margin side right here, and on the top and bottom. So because of that, I'm actually just gonna draw my line right after the 6 mark right here. You can see that there's definitely 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spaces if we include that little bit outside of the dot grid area. This is completely personal preference. If you would rather split the 7 in half or put it after the 7, you do what you want, but this is just what I usually do. Like I said, this video is completely for reference and this page is for reference. So depending on whatever spread you're going to make in the journal, things could change, but this is just to come back to in reference for about measurements, and they're more accurate for like the halves, but for the quarters, they can be a little iffy. The same thing this way. So obviously 19 can't be evenly divided into 2, but considering this spot up here, I'm going to put the line right under the number 9 here instead, because then it's 10 spaces here, and counting this little bit at the top, it's 10 spaces here. So there are the halves and quarters. Next, let's do thirds. So 26, again, cannot be divided evenly into 3. 24 can. It can be divided evenly into 8, but there are 2 extra left over. So personally, what I like to do is just kind of fudge it. Like I said, it's just kind of close to the middle, but I'm going to do 9 spaces, pause, 8 spaces, pause, 9 spaces, and I'm not going to count the ones on the edge in this particular situation. Now, you might be thinking that this is very annoying to have the thirds be off, but in this section it's annoying, but when I include the inner margins on this side, it'll make a little bit more sense. So just hear me out for this part, okay? I'm just going to be drawing a line after 9 right here, and I'm actually going to do a dotted line so you can see it's a little different compared to the halves and quarters. Put a third there. And like I said, over here it'll be more even, but because 26 can't be divided evenly into thirds or quarters, technically, this is just what we gotta do. And then vertically, again, 38 can't be divided into 3, but 36 can. It can be divided evenly into 12. So I'm gonna be doing like 13, 12, and 13, taking consideration the last 2 dots at the bottom here. So basically, I'm gonna draw my first line right under the number 13. Once again, it's close enough, and it does the job for me. Interrupting this video to talk about our partner, Mint Mobile. Let's talk about saving money, because as you guys know, I'm a college kid, so I'm on a college budget, but also I like to read books, I like to buy stationery, they will be my downfall, so it's not very easy for me to cut expenses. But that is why I am so intrigued by Mint Mobile, who this video is in partnership with. They offer premium wireless for just $15 a month. I can get high-speed data and unlimited talk and text on the nation's largest 5G network. I can even bring my own phone, including my existing contacts and current phone number, so I'm actually sacrificing nothing by using Mint Mobile. So I've been using Mint Mobile recently and I see no difference comparing it to other networks. I did an internet speed test just to show you, and my phone says that my internet speed is fast, so that's wonderful. And I'm also always watching YouTube or listening to podcasts, especially whenever I am editing at my desk or I'm doing a lot of work, and there's really no difference. My internet is always super fast and reliable. So you may be wondering how hard it is to switch your service, because big wireless makes it look super difficult, but it's actually very easy. Switching to Mint Mobile is super simplified because thanks to digital eSIM cards, you can sign up on your phone and activate it right from the comfort of your own house. You don't even have to go to a store somewhere. Although most modern day phones do have eSIM cards, if you don't have one, Mint Mobile will ship you one completely for free. Phones and technology can be really confusing for some people, but Mint Mobile makes things so easy. So if you want to save a little money, like me, use my link right here on the screen that is also linked in the description box below to get premium wireless for just $15 a month when you purchase a 3-month plan. Thank you to Mint Mobile or partner with me on this video and helping me save some money so I can go ahead and spend it on some more stationery. Okay, so I just added a little title here at the bottom. That's what I use the Tombow pen for, but like I said, it's completely optional. You don't need something like this, but I just did it to fill in that little extra space. And oh gosh, I smeared again. Oh no. Anyway, but I was just saying that this one is without margins, which is why the lines are completely straight. But I'm going to do one over here with margins to show you just a second option if that is more your speed. So I'm just going to start by numbering across vertically and horizontally first, and then I'll show you the details. My handwriting is definitely not fantastic today, but you know what? It's fine. Okay, so essentially the difference between the without margins and the with margins thing is over here, we're gonna take into consideration what it's like to have spaces between boxes. So in this weekly spread, for example, you can see that there's no spaces in between the boxes here, which is why I'm literally just counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 boxes over and over again without considering any margin space in the middle. However, for a weekly spread like this, there are spaces in the middle that we have to consider. These are two different styles that I go back and forth between often. So the first style would be something like this, where you just count, draw a line and count. But over here, we're gonna draw and leave spaces in between to emulate what it's like in that second weekly spread. So I'm gonna draw the same line over here, which is in between the 13 and 14, but I am going to leave a gap in between. Now the question is how much of a gap to leave. Because we're doing it in halves, there's only gonna be one gap in the middle, and I wanna make sure that there's an even number on both sides. So I'm going to leave a gap of 2 spaces in the middle. So basically where this line is over here, I'm going to meet there and then go 1 up and 1 below and then go to the very bottom. And if I connect all of these lines here, stop, space, and then go on to the next one, now I'm leaving room for a margin space in the middle. In this case, rather than being 19 dots long, each box is 18 dots long. And in fact, I'll mark that just to kind of show you the difference. That's 18 and that's 18, where right here, this is 19 and this long strip is also 19. A little bit different, but it just accounts for space in the middle. Now to do the same thing horizontally, I'm gonna do the exact same technique by leaving a 2 space gap in the middle and drawing my lines across just like they were before. Here, this is 13 on this side and 13 on this side. Over here, because of the space in the middle, each one of these boxes are actually 12. So moving on to the quarters, there are 38 spaces vertically, but because they're going to be 4 boxes, we need 3 spaces in between the boxes. So what I'm thinking is, and this is a lot of math that I'm doing in my head, that it probably is not going to make a lot of sense if you're not following, and that's totally okay. Basically what I'm saying is I'm going to do 4 boxes and they're each going to have 2 spaces in between, because 3 spaces in between 4 boxes times 2 is 6, and 38 minus 6 is 32, which can be divided evenly into 4. Starting in between 6 and 7, let's go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, line, 2 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Unfortunately, this is gonna like intersect the 12 that I wrote, but that's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 2 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Now I'm just gonna draw the vertical lines. So you can see in an instance like this how I could very easily translate this into weekly spreads if I literally just drew boxes across at this exact same width and left those 2 spaces in the middle. Let me do the same thing horizontally. So 26 minus 3 is 23, minus 3 is 20. 20 can be divided evenly into 4 times 5, so each 4 box is going to be 5 spaces long with 2 spaces in the middle. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2 spaces. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I didn't mark these before, so I'm gonna do them real quick. These are all 8 spaces vertically and 5 spaces horizontally, whereas on the left side, these were all 9 spaces, and horizontally, they were 6 or 7. I hope this is making sense. Like I said, this is a lot of math, but if you get this out of the way at the beginning of making a new journal, then when you decide to make spreads later down the line, it'll be much easier and simpler to do. The last one is thirds, and again, you gotta think about 3 boxes need 2 spaces in between. So 38 minus 2 is 36, which can be divided by 3. So I'm just gonna draw my line in between 9 and 10, and each space is going to be 12 long. And this time we're only gonna have 1 space in between, just to make things super even. That way they touch the line every single time. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1 space, and all the way to the bottom. Let me label these at the top so that we know we're talking about quarters, thirds, and halves. And then one more going horizontally. Again, 26 minus 2 is 24, which can be divided evenly by 3 times 8. So starting here, each box is going to be 8 across. 8, and then one space, and this is again going to be cut off by that line, but it's okay. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. One space, 8. Let me draw that line. I probably should have done a dotted line here so you can really see the difference between the thirds and the quarters. Might be, but it's okay. So there we go. There are 2 grid spacing cheat sheets, one without margins and one with margins, to kind of show you what it is that we bullet journalers put at the beginning of our journals for reference paper. I'm gonna hold my hands out of the way so you can take a little screenshot if you'd like to literally copy these exact measurements in your own bullet journal. Go ahead, feel free to do it. You gotta practice once or twice before you get the hang of it. Like I said, it's a lot of math. I know it's a lot of math, okay? But you get this out of the way at the beginning of the journal, and then it's super easy to make spreads with like X amount of boxes later in the journal. For example, if you're going to do a habit tracker and you wanted 3 little calendars on the page, you now know that you have room for 8 and then a space and then 8 and then a space, then 8, just by taking one glance at this grid spacing cheat sheet. So I hope this video was helpful. Comment down below what other bullet journal spreads you want simple tutorials for like this. I'd be happy to make them. As always, subscribe because I post bullet journaling videos every single Saturday on this channel. I will see you guys very soon in the next one. Goodbye.